Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to HeartBeat. Welcome to HeartBeat, everyone. I am your host, Cindi Bright. I hope you're having a good day today, a good evening tonight, and thank you for joining us. We have a good show again lined up for you this evening. Before I introduce guests and co-hosts, I just wanted to update the community on a couple things. This past weekend, I got the privilege to attend the Washington State Democratic Convention here, this Washington Dam Convention. I am a delegate, and so being a delegate means that I was able to participate in the process of voting on issues that we want to have carry forward on the Democratic platform. It was an interesting 2.5 days. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. There was so much talked about, and you can imagine with the state of the nation right now, the rollbacks that are happening, the threats that we're all under. You can just imagine the intensity of the discussions that we were having on a lot of topics. There's too much to cover in a 1-hour HeartBeat show. I wanted to share that with you because I also attended the Black Caucus meeting that we had. It was, as I understand, the second Black Caucus meeting. Last year was the first, and apparently last year there was like a handful of people that attended that meeting. This year, there were close to 50 people in the room. And the folks that were standing up and talking and introducing themselves, that were both delegates and participants, were explaining who they were. They were from all across the state, and they were sharing why they were there. I'm just going to say it was powerful because to see this many people get involved in democracy, to get involved in bringing our voices forward. I continue to say no voice can be silent, and none of us can afford to sit back and not vote this year. We've extended HeartBeat. I get a lot of feedback that I should be doing more across the state than just focusing on, King County primarily and/or some of the elected seats. And so we started branching out a little bit, and we decided we were going to invite folks tonight. We have an esteemed guest we're bringing in to talk with us. His name is Ryan Mello. He is a city councilman for Pierce County, and he is running for the Pierce County executive seat. And you're going to want to hear from him. You're going to want to hear about him and the work that he has accomplished and the things he's been doing. And so we're going to be excited to host him this evening. And the second part of the show, another just really interesting, exciting thing. If you watched the show last week, we had on several representatives. Representative Deborah Entman was here, Christine Reeves, Representative Melanie Morgan, and Brandy Donaghy. And we talked last week with them about reparations. And if you recall the conversation, the way that we talked about it, or that they talked about it, was more from the lens of bills that they are passing and work that they are doing that fit in the category of reparations, but we didn't necessarily talk about money, the cash part, even though I pushed that point. Well, at the Democratic convention, a unanimous vote passed to establish a Reparations and Truth Reconciliation Commission. We have Jesse Wineberry coming on with us on the second half. He's been spearheading it. For those of you who know him, He's been very pivotal in our community as an activist. He was the champion behind I-1000 when that was coming forth. And I've known him for several years to be a very assertive, driven individual who's making things happen. And so we're looking forward to having him on the second half of the show with us and hearing what this all means and like what's next. Let me bring in my co-host with me this evening. Let's welcome in Erin Jones and Stefani Coverson back with me this evening. Good evening, ladies. How are you?
Good.
Doing good.
Good. Good. Lots happening that we can't afford to not go one day without turning on the news to see what's next. What are they trying to roll back? I'm excited to have Ryan Mello on with us this evening to talk about Pierce County. I think, like I said, I've neglected focusing on the South End, and I think it's high time we start hearing more from our leaders down in the South End. So let's welcome in Ryan Mello, running for Pierce County Executive, meaning he is running to be the CEO for Pierce County, and we're excited and honored to have him here with us this evening. Ryan, welcome to your first HeartBeat show with us this evening.
I'm excited to be here, Cindi. Hope it's not my last.
We do too. We want to hear from you. So, we've done our homework on you, but we want to hear about you. You've been serving in city council and county council. You represent the most diverse part of Tacoma, as I understand it. So would you like to talk to us about your work that you have historically focused on and some of your accomplishments? And then we can get into your desire to become the CEO for Pierce County.
Thanks again for having me. Good to see all of you. I've really had the privilege of serving in local government for the past 17 years. First on our Parks Board here in Tacoma, then 10 years on the Tacoma City Council, representing the entire city of Tacoma. And then most recently, the last 4 years serving on the Pierce County Council, with the last 2 as being chair of the Pierce County Council. And as you indicated, I have the privilege of serving the most racially diverse parts of Pierce County. I represent downtown Tacoma, Hilltop, Central, South Tacoma, and East and South End Tacoma. I also represent the communities of First and University Place. And in my time in local government, public service, I've really worked on issues that help move people to opportunity. And so I've worked really hard on things like affordable housing and access to shelter. And what that's looked like, most recently, we've passed what we call the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act. This is a dedicated revenue stream that generates $20 million a year to affordable housing and related services, $20 million in today's dollars. So it's a dedicated revenue stream. We just passed that last March. And just put the money to work. So it's just a little bit over a year old. And that is a big accomplishment because in Pierce County, we need a super majority in order to raise any revenue. I think it's unconstitutional, but we need a super majority of our council to pass any new revenue. We only have 4 Democrats. And right now, unfortunately, the Republican Party is really no to everything, no to any new revenue, no matter for any cause whatsoever, with education, housing, even public safety. They won't even raise revenue for public safety. It's a shame. So it was not easy to pass this vote, is what I'm trying to share with you, but I'm so glad we did. We're going to be able to build thousands of income restricted housing units over the next many years because of this dedicated revenue stream. But I spend my time in public service advancing, helping people advance opportunities to opportunity. So other things in local government, that means in addition to housing, transportation and transit access so people can get themselves to opportunity. We've helped start summer teen late nights here in Tacoma and 5 other school districts outside of Tacoma so young people have access to safe things to do after school and during the summertime. We call it summer teen late nights, and it's really successful. So those are just some examples. I so love the work I get to do, but really I'm always looking at a lens of equity, racial equity in particular, and looking at how I can help folks really get better access to opportunity. And I'm so excited to share some of that work with you tonight.
Well, we'd love to hear it. Like, talk to us about why you're running for the executive seat.
Well, I'm running for Pierce County Executive. It's an open seat, but it's really time for change. We've had some time where we really haven't been able to make as much of the progress as we need to make on a lot of the issues that are really facing us, right? The issues of affordable housing and transportation and helping all communities have better access to opportunity, right? The current county executive vetoed our effort to put together a diversity, equity, and inclusion commission. The Pierce County Council passed a diversity, equity, and inclusion commission after getting a recommendation from our equity review panel, who made one and only one major recommendation to us, which was you need a diversity, equity, and inclusion commission to work on unpacking these systemic barriers for the long term. We can't just have a short-term equity review committee. We need a commission to think about this and work on this for the long term, and unpack those barriers and get at those systems, right? We need long-term accountability and long-term good recommendations and decision-making. He vetoed that commission, the creation of that commission. I'm going to bring that back when I'm the next Pierce County executive. The current county executive vetoed the ability for us to raise the pride flag, the LGBTQ pride flag, during Pride Month in Pierce County. Vetoed that. So, that's just some of the work. The Pierce County executive plays a major role in Pierce County, not only leading the day-to-day operations of government here and the delivery of services, but also bringing people together to solve some of the biggest challenges, right? You have a platform as county executive to bring the 23 cities and towns, the 4 federally recognized tribes, the 13 school districts together to work on the major issues of the day, whether that's the behavioral health crisis, our housing crisis, homelessness. And the current county executive just is not doing that. And we need a county executive who knows that we can bring that together. And, the last major pillar of the work I would share is the county executive plays a major role in regional governance, working with our partners in King County and Snohomish County to govern Sound Transit, right? To govern Pierce Transit, to govern our Pierce County Health Department, and these major regional bodies that really advance access to opportunity, access to transportation solutions, and transit. So much of this work is done regionally in this metropolitan region. And I want to be a voice of the South Sound to work cooperatively with folks in King and Snohomish County to advance the interests of this entire metropolitan region. And of course, our interests here in the South Sound in particular.
It's interesting, Ryan. I think once you said it, I remember, I think we met when you were on the Parks Commission. Actually, I think that was the first time we met. But I am reminded of, I actually in the late night basketball program on the Hilltop in Tacoma for, I think, 3 or 4 years. But I think about how the Hilltop has changed. I've lived all across Pierce County. So I lived on the South Hill. We lived in South Tacoma, east side of Tacoma, and then in Puyallup. And I'm just curious, when I think about how the demographics have shifted so significantly, like, how is there a way to protect? When I look at the Black community and the Hill, there is not a Black community anymore because gentrification has just pushed the community out of the Hilltop and made it unaffordable. And Salishan, I was an educator in the area as Salishan was rebuilt, and what that meant is displacing all of our students in that community. And so I'm just curious how we keep community together. There's something about having communities that like have a center and they have places to go that are in common. They have restaurants that serve them, their hairdressers and community. And I feel like so much of the housing crisis has forced people out of community.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you see your role as having a place in that conversation?
Absolutely. I see what you see. My partner and I live across from the Grand Cinema in downtown Tacoma, right? Just 4 blocks from what you and I know as Hilltop, Tacoma. And I definitely see what you see, Erin. We have a major role to play in limiting displacement. I don't know that we can ever stop displacement, but highly limiting displacement so folks can afford to stay in the communities that they want to be in, they've grown up in and want to be in, living closer to where they work or where their community is, and their sense of places. So, I'm really proud of the work that Tacoma Housing Authority in particular is doing. They are taking anti-displacement work very seriously. I can see out my window that there's a project they're leading on. Families are moving in August, and a project they call Housing Hilltop, and they named the housing project Housing Hilltop, and I love that name, Housing Hilltop. It's going to serve about 250 families, permanently income restricted units. Help and their strategy to get folks to inviting folks to move back into these properties are folks who were who have been historically displaced from Hilltop. And not only that, to your point, the ground floor of these 2 buildings on Hilltop that I know you know well, right by the Hilltop Safeway, the ground floor of these 2 buildings are reserved for community space. So a arts organization, dance, theater arts organization will be one of the ground floor retailers. And the other ground floor retail is really reserved for people of color, owned businesses or community-based organizations. And so I'm thrilled about that. And there's some other really great projects going on in the Hilltop of Tacoma. Similar to that the project I just talked about is the biggest scaled project that is finishing construction. Yeah. So, it's how do we mimic those kinds of projects to limit displacement in a meaningful way, and really protect space for Black and Brown communities?
The other thing I wonder, because I live in Lacey now, so I don't live that far south of you, but I also think about the impact of the military base being in your region and the poverty. I don't think most Washingtonians are aware of the poverty of those infantry folks, and just the poverty of Clover Park School District, and just the reality that people are moving in and out. Like, how do you support a base that is that large with so many moving parts, and where they have their own kind of government structure? How do you provide input there?
Yeah, big impact, right? I just had a meeting yesterday with staff to the chief of staff of the garrison commander. We were talking just yesterday, talking about how can we have more cooperative agreements between county government and the base on 2 things in particular: housing and childcare. The number of individuals, right? The 40,000 plus soldiers at JBLM, there's not enough housing on base. So they spill out of the base, and they have a huge impact on the availability of housing off base. And it's more expensive for them. And the cost of childcare is so significant. Not only for soldiers, for non-military families, childcare is a huge burden. But those 2 issues in particular is the active conversation we're having with them. How can we work together, county government and JBLM, on those 2 issues in particular, access to affordable housing and childcare? I think it starts with, intentional work together, building a relationship, thinking about how we can work together. It's difficult, right, Erin? You know full well that the base commander rotates every 2 years. Every 2 years, we're getting a new commander. And so, once you just start getting a relationship and trust built, and then you have a new commander, right? So we gotta figure out how to build trust and relationship with the staff that stay for a long time, who support the base commander and those decision makers, and really build that trust and relationship with those chief of staffs and those people who are around for a long time.
Thank you.
I have some curiosity around, I've been doing some research into environmental justice. And so I came across a study that talks about how Latine or Hispanic folks and Black folks breathe in more fine particulates and pollution than they make. So 63% and 56%, respectively. And then white identifying folks on average are exposed to 17% less air pollution than they make. So, right, in essence, we're talking about an overconsumption of clean air. And so some of this comes from like where our schools are located, where, places of community and gathering, housing that is reserved for folks with lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And so, given, I think, some of the pollutants historically that have been in Pierce County, as well as, you have these large military bases and, large trucks, sort of all of these things. I'm curious to hear about the plan for incorporating environmental justice, particularly as we're having these conversations, right, about building spaces for community for Black and Brown people. How are we making sure that these structures are in locations where we're less likely to be forced to overconsume other folks' pollutants?
Yeah, I love that you brought up environmental justice in this particular example, Stefani. A few things. First of all, why does it matter? You raised a very good point of particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter from exhaust, which often comes from diesel, from trucks and cars from highways and that sort of thing. Why does it matter? Well, particulate matter 2.5, it's a micron that is less, it looks less than a hair follicle. And it matters because this specific pollutant that is in diesel and these kinds of air pollutants gets trapped in people's lungs and bloodstreams and causes chronic disease like heart failure and diabetes and certain cancers. So it matters that certain communities are disproportionately impacted by pollution because it creates really significant health impacts, chronic disease health impacts. It really matters. So the county executive I shared earlier plays such an important role regionally, amongst other things. I mentioned serving on the Sound Transit Board, the Public Health Board, these sorts of things. The county executive also serves on the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency Board, has a direct role in directing clean air regulation, clean air resources to clean up our air. The county executives from King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties serve on this board of directors to govern our clean air agency in Central Puget Sound. So that's a major way that the county executive can have a significant role in directing resources and regulation to make our air cleaner, bring cleaner school buses and cleaner sources of transportation to areas that are disproportionately and highly impacted by pollution. Also, to your point, one of the things I'm so proud of our council majority, we've implemented an equity index in our decision making in Pierce County for the first time. We just launched it a year ago. The equity index maps the entire county of access to opportunity. Of course, racial equity is really paramount in our equity index, but we also look at income and disability and other equity issues, but it's very race forward in its approach. And so we can see visually, right, where there is disproportionate impacts, and air quality is one of those measures in our equity index. So that's a tool that we will be using. It's new, like I said, but is a tool that we will be using about citing of services like schools, like you mentioned, and other community services, ball fields, play fields, community centers. Where are we putting low-income housing? We can use the equity index to make much more informed decisions. So we got to drive down the sources of pollution. That's why things like the Climate Commitment Act are so important in Washington State, because it is a real tangible path forward to reducing pollution, especially in the transportation sector. And that's so much of where the pollution comes from for communities that are forced to live near highways and high traffic roadways. Communities, low-income communities who can't afford electric school buses, right? The wealthier communities can afford electric school buses. The less wealthy communities have old diesel school buses. And so what are their school children breathing in when they're waiting for the school bus, right? These are just some examples. So it really matters who's thinking about this, who's leading, and how we're leading and how we're implementing on this work.
Ryan, do you have an opponent in this race?
We do. We have an opponent. Unfortunately, she's really conservative. She has a 0% pro-choice Washington scorecard, a 0% equal rights Washington scorecard, an 8% Washington conservation voter environmental scorecard, 8%, and a 23% working families scorecard. So, and an F from the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. So unfortunately, she fails in a lot of areas where a lot of trusted organizations like Planned Parenthood and Pro-Choice Washington and Equal Rights Washington and the environmental community and those who fight for working families, really have been leading, and she gets an F in all these categories, unfortunately.
Is she one of the MAGAs?
She is. She's regularly seen with Donald Trump signs at various events.
It's important for community to hear some of these things because we just need them to be informed voters. So I ask that so that people recognize when ballots drop, which will be soon. Correct? When do the ballots drop here for the primary?
Yeah, we're expecting ballots to drop that weekend of July 20th.
Okay. So about 3 weeks.
We're about 3 weeks out of ballots dropping for the August 6th primary.
That's awesome. Any final thoughts you want to lead? Do you want to share your website where people can, we've had enough politicians on to know everybody needs cash to win campaigns. What's your website where people can donate? Any other final thoughts you have that you wanted to share?
I really appreciate that. Folks can go to ryanmello.com. My mom says Mello like Jello because oftentimes people want to put a W at the end.
Oh.
So it's ryanmello.com with Mello like Jello. You can see, at the websites, areas to engage, ways to volunteer, ways to give money so we can keep our communication to voters coming. You can also see our broad base of support and endorsements. We're proud to have support like United States Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland. And
I did look. I made a note of many of to share with the community because I did notice our notable. You had a ton of them. Particularly, I noticed our Black electeds. Senator Tawana Nobles is on there. Representative Melanie Morgan, Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland, Representative Charlotte Mina. I saw Kristen Eng. I saw a lot of folks there, and I'm congratulating you on that because that's a major accomplishment to have that many people standing behind you and people who are already in office from all different parts, Port Commissioner, Congress, represent the state. So a great base of support. Yeah, really happy for that. Well, we really thank you, Ryan, for coming on and speaking with the community about your campaign and introducing who you are and what you stand for. And so we'll be thrilled to watch you come across the finish line and to our constituents who are in the Pierce County area. Vote Ryan Mello like Jello, Mello. Thank you, Ryan, for signing on and coming on to HeartBeat this evening.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
All right. That was so awesome. I'd not met him before tonight, so that is really cool to have him on and to see and hear what he stands for. And so I'm hoping our community pays attention to him as a candidate.
He's really
Um,
thoughtful. He's
yeah,
really
he is
thoughtful
very
and
thoughtful.
knowledgeable.
Very much so. I love, when I went on his website and I was looking to see, who's standing behind him and who not. I mean, there had to be 100 and some people on there that are all putting their names up saying we want him in. And so a very big deal, and a very big deal in today's world. Like, we need candidates like him who are willing to go toe to toe on some of these really tough issues that we need to have. And he, again, like when we were talking about Senator Dinger a couple weeks ago, somebody who's accomplished, somebody who's actually done the work, somebody who has results that can share and showcase for himself. So that was pretty awesome. I was happy about
I
that.
think it's really important to find candidates that have receipts, right? So they
Right.
have performance versus promise, right? And promises.
Yeah.
So I was really excited to see that.
You mean meritocracy, as somebody who's actually done it versus, I mean, I don't know the chick that he's running against, but if she has an F on all her scorecards, she's not doing the work, right? And so,
That part.
I always think it's important, because particularly when it's women's voices that are coming forward, because, we advocate for women, as people know, but we advocate for the right women, not them just showing up who have somebody pushing her from behind and she hasn't done anything to warrant the vote of the people. So we just got to pay attention to that. And I really, I say that too, because, I remember in my past life looking at those pamphlets, those voter pamphlets, and you just can't discern, because there's so much boilerplate that, so people should pay attention. It's not just a man versus a woman in this. This is somebody who's got receipts, as you said, Steph, right? Somebody who's doing the work out there. So thrilled
And
to
I
have.
think it's the thing so it's this projection, right? So these talking points around anti-DEI, right, are this idea that organizations or even political parties, are putting anybody forward. Like, if you are pro DEI, you're finding people with no qualifications and putting them in these positions. And it's really projection, right? Because we're looking at some of the candidates now that the Republican Party is putting forward that have no experience or are actually having planks in their political platforms that are harmful to the communities that they are members of, right? Or their identity. So women, folks who are Black, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Erin, did you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, just I want to encourage people, and I know I said this last year on the show. Don't just read what's in the pamphlet. Go to their Facebook pages, like, see what they care about on a regular basis, and see who is supporting them. Don't just trust. It is so easy to write what you want people to hear in your little voter pamphlet. And then the other thing I would say too is ask your friends. So maybe you're somebody that's not engaged in politics and you don't know who is somebody that you look up to in your community. Ask them who they're voting for and why, and get feedback from people you trust. I have people who reach out to me all the time and ask about state superintendent, because they know I am in that arena. So figure out who are the people in the arena that have done the deep dive and can tell you the real facts and bring receipts. But don't just trust the voters pamphlet. Reach out to your friends. And there's just too much at stake right now. There's too much at stake right now to not care. And these positions, like the Pierce County, your county executives, your county commissioners, your city council people, right now, as much as president matters, these close to home races really, 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 really matter right now.
And let me add this. So yes, talk to people that you trust if you're not already, involved and are feeling comfortable about this. If I see one more social media post about we should have listened to Black women,
Oh yeah.
right? So listen to Black
Yeah.
women, right?
Yeah.
Listen to the people who are going to be impacted by who is elected into office, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to see all this rending of garments and gnashing of teeth. It's important to see, like, what are folks in the trans community saying?
Yeah.
What are
Mhm.
folks in various immigrant communities are saying?
Mhm.
What are Black women saying?
Mhm.
So
And you know,
broaden your research and scope.
and LGBTQ, and I didn't ask him, but I believe he's out of LGBTQ community, because when I looked at his, I hope I'm not making an assumption, but him and his partner are on his campaign page, and to me that shows a lot of pride in who he is, and not hiding himself from the world. And when you see that, you know what he deals with. And so when people have to deal with these sorts of issues, they are the people that are equipped to lead change. And how many times have you heard me say this, that it is my corporate days, right? Like, determining who's qualified now must include the people who have sacrificed, who have
Yeah.
suffered, and who have sweat. And he meets all three of those criteria for his race. And so that's kind of the filter that I always look at when I'm looking at candidates. And, you know, whether they're just talking a game, to your point, Stephanie, or when you were talking about the voters pamphlet or not, like, so anyhow, I found him to be, whoever did his page did a really good job of branding him too, because and he's very warm. I mean, did you catch his personality? Like, he's
Yeah.
very warm and caring, and so we need people like that in leadership positions. Done are the days of um, the Kelly Chambers of the world, who just want to clamor for power, and once you get them in, you can't unseat them. So too
Right,
much to lose, too much at stake. You
right.
know, we were supposed to have Jesse Wineberry, but I don't see that he's signed on yet, because I do want to talk about what happened with the reparations issue at the Democrat convention. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the resolution that was proposed. It'll take me a couple of minutes here. Um, and that was adopted. What I won't be able to speak to without Jesse here is what is next. But let me just read. It is called Reparations and a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Whereas 400 years of collective harm have been levied on Black Americans through a system of exploitation, deprivation, and murder. Whereas while they are not a cure-all, truth commissions historically have helped societies to address collective trauma and abuse. Whereas H.R. 40 was introduced into Congress in 2020 to convene a commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans Act. Whereas California is in the midst of a commission studying reparations for slavery, for which the final report is due out in June. Whereas the net wealth of a typical Black family in America is around 1/10 that of a white family, and historical data also reveals that no progress has been made in reducing income and wealth inequalities between Black and white households over the past 70 years. Whereas the history of systemic racism against Black Americans, including but not limited to slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, housing discrimination, and redlining, job discrimination, discrimination of government benefits such as GI Bill and Social Security, healthcare discrimination, disproportionate representation in the prison industrial complex, including convict leasing, has led to lower incomes and lower accumulated wealth for Black Americans. Therefore, be it resolved that Washington State Democrat conventions support and promote the creation of a federal Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the next congressional cycle to study and develop proposals for reparations to redress the historic and continuing effects of slavery and subsequent systemic racial, societal, and economic discrimination against Black Americans. And that's what got unanimously passed at the Washington State Democrat Convention this weekend. And so it's a huge accomplishment, given what we were kind of listening to last week about that the cash aspect of all of this wasn't kind of even on the table. Well, it's now on the table. And so that's what I know, like I wanted to share. I don't know where Jesse is this evening, because I do want to hear how. I think we should be interested as a community on when this commission is now getting formed, who's participating on this commission. Is there a timeline for the study? Like, can we leverage some of the work that's been done in California? You know, does this have to go to a vote? Like, all that sort of stuff are the questions I was going to ask him tonight. But reactions from either of you about what I just read and about the passing of this unanimously from the vote on the floor.
It's exciting.
I
I just want
think
to
it's
see the
exciting.
action.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And the other question I would add to your list of questions is who gets to sit on that committee, right? Who's going to be on that committee? You know, I have questions. And, you know, this idea of those who have experienced the most pain should be closest to the power and the decision making. And I've been reading some about, for example, the Black farmers. Like, so we talk about these issues that, you know, we're talking about 2021, right? So the USDA received almost 60,000 applications for their discrimination financial assistance program for payments to Black farmers who were shut out of USDA support and funding processes. And so I was listening to some farmers and their, you know, Black farmers and advocates talking about this issue. And they were talking about how like white farmers would get their loans for assistance approved in like 30 days, and Black farmers, it would take almost a year, right? So this isn't something that happened in 1821 or even 1921. We're talking about issues that were happening up until 2021, right? And so as a result of, you know, the USDA dragging their feet, you have Black farmers losing their farms, losing, right, this generational wealth or opportunity to even build more generational wealth due to like foreclosures on equipment and property that could have been prevented had their loans been approved in 30 days or their requests for assistance been approved within 30 days.
Do either of you have knowledge? I know my sister does. My sister lives in San Francisco, so she's probably watching the show right now. We talk about reparations. Do either of you have any insight as to what's happening with the San Francisco Commission on it, the study on it? Do you?
Well, I had a friend on the commission. I have a friend who's on the commission who was been part of this process, and I mean, she and I met on TikTok, and I think what is so powerful, and I've been saying this for years, having grown up in the Netherlands during apartheid, and then watching the Truth and Reconciliation process in South Africa. Obviously, it's not perfect, and there's still work that has to be done. But I have said for so long, we are never going to heal as a country until we're willing to be honest about the truth. And I was just sharing with someone the other day, we're like an alcoholic that doesn't want to acknowledge that it's an alcoholic. And the reality for an alcoholic is even an alcoholic that wants to get well, it's a lifetime of getting well. So it's not like I just say sorry and then walk away and it's all good. I mean, part of Alcoholics Anonymous is apologizing and making amends and reconciling. And I mean, everybody knows that process. And so I struggle with why it's so hard for Americans to understand the need for this kind of a process here. But my friend who was on the part of the process in San Francisco, it's been a really beautiful experience for her just to watch them take it so seriously. And I think, Stephanie, you were referring to, I think you and I watched the same TikTok video last week about the Harvard Kennedy School with the reparations conversation. You were talking about it. I was like, wait, I just watched that video today too.
She
They
sent
I read
it.
the report.
But she was sending
And I
it to
read
her.
the report.
Oh, I need to read the report.
Yeah.
But I think what I loved about that, and I saw it literally right before our show last week, and then you started talking about it. I was like, wait, I just heard this video with him in it. There is so much evidence, and they've already broken down how to make this happen. So for all the people who say we don't have the resources, we can't do this, that is a bunch of BS. You're choosing not to make a difference, but people have already done the research to determine how to make this happen. We have to be willing to sit down at tables and actually
Yeah.
have the conversations.
Yeah. You know, the one I saw that too because Steph sent it to me. So I was listening to it. And then I was reading a lot of the comments that people make. And, you know, whether it be willfully ignorant, people, the greatest resistance I saw to it is people that can't seem to connect dots because they hold on to the fact that, well, that didn't happen in this lifetime. They aren't able to understand, either they aren't willing to understand or refusing to do their homework, but they don't understand how the system has perpetuated itself and gotten to this point. And so, yes, I mean, you could argue slavery still exists today when people are still working for, you know, $15 an hour or $9 an hour in some places where, right, where, but setting that aside, the wealth gaps, the, you know, appreciation of land and properties and earning power still, you know, a fraction, like all of those things are the system that is continuing to keep the divide greater. And there is no other way to rectify it. I mean, all the things that we heard our legislators talk about are all wonderful things that need to get done. And we need money. The money has to be put into Black families to reinvest in some of the properties and, you know, home ownership, all those things. So it is necessary. And to your point about that, the gentleman that did the Harvard study, the research is done.
It's already been done.
It's all been done. So
Multiple times. And there
multiple
is a woman who wrote a book called The White Bonus. Her name is Tracy McMillan. And she calculated, and she calls it kind of her back of the envelope estimate, but based on her own family history and what she knows about how wealth has been passed down, and as well as the beneficiary rate of, you know, getting the job, getting the opportunity that, you know, her being, people taking a chance on her. She estimated that she has benefited personally $372,000 herself, right? Again, given her family history and all of these other factors. So it is, right? So folks are benefiting from this system today. And I think part of what clouds the issue is this fallacy that America is a meritocracy. And then this whole issue of like the uppity Negro, right? So what happened historically when Black folks got wealth, right? And Black communities were doing well, they were destroyed. Right. So if we think about Tulsa, and I think there are over roughly 150 other race massacres, or the number of Black people that were lynched because they didn't get off the sidewalk, or they made eye contact with a white man, or they looked at a white woman too flirtatiously. So all of these stolen lives and stolen wealth and stolen opportunities. You know, even Tulsa, Oklahoma is making money, right, off of the race massacre, because it is a tourist attraction. So they're making money off of it. And then we got to ask the question, what's on that land now? So there are people that own that land and have businesses and sort of all of the things where all of those people were killed, all those Black folks were killed and run off.
hmm There is, you just reminded me, because I saw this video about, to your point about all the work that Black America has done to rebuild our lives and rebuild society that works for us. I'm watching because I know Senator Cooter was trying to get a state bank established here in Washington State. Are you paying attention to the Black banks that are standing up? I actually just joined one called Greenwood. I saw Jesse Williams is their face to it. And so he did this commercial on it.
Mm.
And so I was like, yep, let me open an account there, right? Like, we just have to start diverting our resources and helping so that our communities can also prosper, right? Like, and the more of us that do things like that, the better off, or the faster the economics can grow for Black people as a community. And so I highly encourage, like, in every way, like we support Black businesses, that we just have to do things to help rebuild society, because I'm hoping it's in my lifetime that we see reparations done, given to families. But we also know the resistance is real, and the resistance, we'll see what's going to happen on two things. One, July 11th, to see if they lock the fool up. And then we are going to see what's going to happen in this national election. And so those are both going to dictate, literally, what the next steps are for all of us as a community, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also want to talk about, or just kind of raise the toll, right, on being, the bearer and the advocate and the activist, and leading organizations that are trying to do this work. And so you amplifying the Greenwood Bank made me think of Ayanna Parsons,
Mhm.
who was the co-founder of the Fearless Fund,
Mhm.
stepped down.
I didn't
And
hear she
so
stepped down.
she stepped down.
Mm.
I did not
Yeah,
hear
so that was just yesterday. I read
that.
about,
Okay.
so it hasn't even been 24 hours since I read about it, but I got really emotional. So all of the work that the Black women at the Fearless Fund, have done to try to stand in the gap
Mhm.
for Black women in particular, and other women of color who are shut out of the venture capitalism process.
Mhm.
And then to, have, uh, you know, you have to step back, sort of the emotional and psychological and physical toll that constantly fighting this bullshit,
Mhm.
weighs on you. So I just wanted to say her name, amplify her voice, and just, yeah, I had big feelings yesterday when I read that.
Cindy, you literally just texted me about this before the show today, about the numbers of Black women that have tumors and are getting sick and are dying. And this is the wear that, when I talk to white folks about this kind of wear, they're like, this is not racism, but it is though. And this is the stuff that it's not invisible. It's not invisible. These are people who are really great people who are working their behinds off, and it is killing them. It's physically
Mhm.
killing them.
And we don't have the privilege to not, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Right.
that's the double
Mm-hmm.
edge. I mean, people close to me know I'm battling health. I messaged you earlier about, Stefani knows this too, about, our really good, we have good sisters that are out here doing tremendous work to advance these issues to help us with housing and, all the things that they're working on. And I'm heartbroken to hear about the woman from the Fearless Fund, because it's to your point about, standing in the gap. We're all trying to, many of our businesses were formed on the premise of trying to advance this work, right? Stephanie, your business, well, all three of our businesses are standing in that gap of trying to move these agendas forward. And we just constantly beat our heads and beat our heads. And, Erin, you're living on an airplane and out of a hotel room, and you're getting to see the, the impact on our children, with what's happening to our kids. It's brutal. I mean, I almost can't describe, I almost can't put it into words what it means to not have the privilege to just rest, to just, okay, I can take today off, but tomorrow, I still got to do this because we still got to go da 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 da. And I've got to fill out, 110 grant applications to maybe get one source of income because all the government contracts are going this, like the things we have to do to hustle to keep, like, it's crazy.
Which is why I'm going to Mexico next month for the entire month.
You are?
Yeah.
For July or August?
July. We're going for the entire month of July. And this is my form of activism right now. Like rest is a form of activism for me right now. Just because I can't give 12 months of the year. I just can't do it. Yeah. And be healthy.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Erin, I almost, in our text message earlier, I almost said to you, I know you're running a lot of miles right now. I was running those kind of miles when I got my first diagnosis in 2019 that set me backwards. And so even the healthiest of us who care about, and now I can't even physically run anymore, right? Like life can happen on a dime for any of us. And I get scared for myself. I get scared for us, our friends that are all out here trying to make a difference. And yet, if we don't run for offices, if we don't get in positions that can influence this, even I was really hoping Jesse was here tonight because, I wanted to give him his flowers for what he's doing. Like, it's a lot of work to go get this kind of stuff done and passed, and then to have a unanimous vote on the floor by that many people clearly says people recognize this needs to get done. It wasn't even debated, and I heard a lot of debates. Sunday was tough at this convention, just listening to the debates on the floor, because it was everything, right? It was the war. I mean, it was just everything. There was so much being talked about. Yeah.
And I'm sure that there was a lot of wrangling that went on behind the scenes to get to that unanimous vote. Can we talk about something on a related and lighter note, or maybe it's not a lighter note?
Yes.
JJ Reddick.
Oh,
Can we talk about that?
We can talk about it, Steph. What do we talk about? The one with the least qualifications gets because of the comfort of the complexion, or what did I say to you? The caucasity of the complexion, right? They have the audacity to apply for work and get into positions that are not. It is all the time, right? We know this, but go ahead. What were you going to say about JJ Reddick and the new
I
Lakers?
was just going to say, I wish I could be shocked and surprised that somebody with zero coaching experience is now the head coach of like one of the most famous basketball teams in the world with zero, like was a fairly new podcaster and commentator, played, I guess, basketball back in the day at Duke.
I remember him as a player.
And my favorite part is, this individual says that, when pressed about his qualifications, I don't know how to answer your question because I don't give an F. And so, and I think about Black women. I think about people of color with all of the receipts accused of being a quote unquote diversity hire.
Affirmative
And
action.
affirmative action hire. And I'm wondering how many states of, apoplexy the media would be in if, a Black woman with all of her credentials and receipts said, I don't give an F, I don't know how to answer your question because I don't give an F. Also, I think the other interesting thing is apparently, he was using racial slurs or used a racial slur in when they were in China. There was a basketball game or something going on where he inadvertently tongue-tied, used a racial slur about Chinese people. And so I'm just wondering about the due diligence. I'm wondering about the due diligence of this hire. That's all.
I heard that he is a good friend of LeBron's. And that they've been doing some training together. And I don't know that he's going to stay. Like, I just don't believe that he's going to last. I think it's an interim. It doesn't make sense to me, but I think it's a short term. It makes no sense.
Well, here's what I say to it. I mean, that's the bro club, right? The bros all look out for each other. And so, again, if we could, let me tell you the story about something that went on this weekend. I'll make it quick because I know we're at the hour here. I was in a conversation. I had stopped before the convention and had met several people, had never met many of them that were at the table. They were from across the state. Group of women got together and were having a drink before the event. And this conversation started, and there were comments being made about another woman, a woman of color, by a woman of color, although she doesn't present as a woman of color, but in front of a group of these other women. And I could not sit still because I had to jump in and defend the person that was being attacked. And you both know her. But the point that I really made, I felt it was almost like Sunday church, because I've said this is why women can advance, because what we continue to do is sabotage each other or talk shit about each other, right? The bros all go look out for each other and make sure they all have access. Women are so much smarter than men. I'm just saying it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to men, but we are. And, if women could come together, women could change this world, period. There's just too much power in what we're able to accomplish. And Black women ourselves could just do. My point is stopping this behavior dead in the tracks of bad mouthing each other and not reaching up and helping our sister and being too threatened and too jealous to let another woman succeed is what's killing us. And we have no room at this juncture for any of this anymore. And so I defended, and I ended up running into one of the women who was at the table a couple of days later, and she pulled me aside and she said, wow. She said, I've never heard anybody step in and defend that the way that you did. And she said, if we had more people that did this. And I'm like, that's exactly right. Just cut these conversations off about, and if you're not happy with somebody, go resolve your conflict with them and do it privately, not publicly in front of other people. Stop sabotaging somebody because your experience is that, we have got to do better. We as women have got to do better, be better and help each other. So let JJ go coach the Lakers. We just need to get, Vice President Harris in office, right? Right. Let him go coach, but we go put a Black woman in a position of power. And let's get our Senate and our Congress full of powerful women that can help make things change. And let's get our elected seats and these local seats that have so much power and influence and gatekeeping over who's coming in and let's get women, some powerful women elected and into these seats. Let's stand together as women and do this so that we can just turn our cheek to them, let them do what they're going to do, and let's go rule the world. That's what we need to focus on. How's that for you? Wednesday night church
Boom,
session.
mic drop.
Right?
Roll the music.
I just feel so passionate about that because I cannot stand women bad talking other women. I just can't stand it. So
yeah. And it's easier, right? I feel like in many ways it's easier to gossip and have the conversation around other, people than actually pull someone aside and say, hey, sis, your slip is showing.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And have that one-on-one conversation. But that's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what needs to happen.
I agree.
And we can still be friends and sisters and all of the things, even if we don't see eye to eye.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So alignment versus agreement.
Right. Where'd you get that cliche from?
Where did I get that from? Did you say?
Ladies, it's the hour. I appreciate that you came on again tonight. Erin, I'm glad to know you're on vacation for the month of July. I want you to rest and get some rest. I'm not sure if we're doing a show next week or not because it is the 4th of July next week, or it's the 2nd or 3rd, but I think a lot of people are traveling. I'll keep you posted. I'll keep the audience posted. But Erin, I want you to get some rest. You too, Steph. Your school, I know, is kicking your butt. So anyhow, thank you for joining me tonight and having this conversation. It's the fastest hour of the day. Audience who joined, thank you for joining in and listening and being with us here every week. I will keep you posted if we're doing a show next week. I've been waffling over it because I've been contemplating traveling myself, even though I haven't bought the ticket yet. So who knows? Anyhow, thank you for joining us. I hope you learned a lot from getting to see Ryan Mello for Pierce County Executive. I hope you learned a little bit about what's going on in the reparations. We will follow up with Jesse and see if he can make it at a future date. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening, everyone.
Half that up in sacks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah.